All right, so that's my update for my weight loss journey, and I want to react now to dying fat funeral options. Um, if you've been watching my channel, I put out 3 videos this week talking about obese people who have died, and so I did receive this recommendation to react to, and so I'm gonna react to it now. I thought about making a separate video out of it, but I don't feel like editing today. Just kind of relaxing today. So I'm going to react to this video and see what it's like, and see what it's like for big people who pass away, and what that's like to the funeral home, to the families, etc.
Hello, Deathlings! A question I get all the time, and a question that is not discussed nearly enough, is if I am a fat or very fat person, what will happen to my body when I die? What are my options for cremation or burial? By the way, if you have arrived on this here video to say some hateful stuff, that's not what we're doing today. I'm stretching out my comment blocking finger. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. There's a lot.
All right, so this YouTuber is a mortician, apparently. She's likely handled obese patients who have passed away. And that's something I mentioned in one of the videos previously, that a lot of people don't think about that when they're that overweight. They think, I'm just doing it to myself and nobody else is involved. But then you have to think about your family and how they would handle in the event of your death. Because if you're that big, you are likely to lose your life sooner than somebody who's not that big. And it depends, right? Like, you could be small and get into a car accident. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about dying as a result of your health. And so we'll see what she has to say.
A lot of fear that I hear from fat people who, by the way, tell me they prefer I use the term fat, so that's what I'll use.
Really? Why do fat people care so much about that term that they don't like to be told that they're obese? That's the technical word for fat. What is so harmful about the word obese that they prefer fat? I not want to be called fat. I don't like the word fat, but that's what I am. I say obese because that's the medical clinical term for being fat. It's no difference. Whatever.
The fear is that when they die, their body will be treated poorly. Author and activist Marianne Kirby said, I don't actually have high hopes for my corpse being treated with respect. The fat corpse has been the hinge of too many jokes. We also talked to Joy Nash, star of Dietland, who said people act like there won't be a place for fat people when we die.
Usually there's not. I'm just covering that 850-pound woman who passed away. There was a lot of very difficult conversations regarding that. Some people said that they dismember your body, and it can be very difficult because of the amount of fat, and fat is very combustible. And so there's a lot of people who've had their whole crematorium catch on fire. Just a lot of different things happen like that. So yeah, it's very likely that the fat body is not treated with any kind of dignity. It's unlikely that there will be an open casket, and if there is, it won't be somebody who's 700, 800, 900 pounds, very likely. But we'll keep watching.
Too fat to cremate? Too fat to bury? Are we just too fat to be dead? Are they going to dump us out on the sidewalk? First, it's important to know that any dead body can be accommodated. No matter the size or shape, there is a way to give you a burial or cremation. That being said, the funeral industry does have some catching up to do. Options for morbidly obese people, as the medical industry would term them, are often limited and more expensive.
This is what I don't understand about the whole fat activists talking about they need more accommodations. This goes to show that the amount of fat people is new to society, because even the funeral industry, they are still trying to catch up. Like, there are more fat people dying now at a younger age, and as a result of that, the funeral industry has to catch up. They need bigger refrigerators to hold dead bodies. They need bigger slabs. They need to accommodate with bigger funeral options. They need to dig bigger holes. They need bigger gray caskets and stuff like that. So yeah, the funeral industry is trying to catch up to the amount of fat people who are dying now. And it's very, very sad to see that they have to do that.
So what are the realities of how the funeral industry handles a very fat body? Let's start with caskets. Yes, there are specialized caskets that can accommodate larger and taller bodies. For those weighing 300 pounds or about 22 stone and above, an oversized casket might be required.
That casket looked twice the size of the smaller one.
Over what size, you're asking? Unclear. These are just the industry terms, and I want you to have that vocabulary. So a standard casket is about 24 to 27 inches wide, whereas certain oversized casket makers can make caskets as wide as 52 inches, accommodating a person who is well over 500 pounds, even up to 1,000 pounds. And while oversized caskets aren't the norm in a casket showroom, more and more funeral homes are stocking them, or working with casket makers who make custom caskets, so that's a positive. Some casket makers can make standard size caskets larger inside by making the sides of the caskets thinner. This is important because a larger person can go inside a standard casket and then still fit in a standard cemetery plot. That brings us to the next burial consideration, plot and vault size. Standard burial plots and vaults are, not shockingly, designed to fit these standard caskets. If a fat person requires a larger casket, then they require a larger plot. And unfortunately, not all conventional or traditional cemeteries have been designed to accommodate this.
Yeah, that's an important point too, that they have a certain standard when it comes to digging out graves, because graves are so far apart. And throughout history, walk into any cemetery, they have a standard space size between plots. And so just think about how much more expensive it will be to take out more ground for your plot than the next person. Yeah, it's just something else to consider. See if there's any comments so far. She's fun to watch. This video of hers led me to the rabbit hole of fat acceptance. She handled the topic sensitively. Yeah, she seems very sensitive to the fat body, I guess. This Mortician's YouTube channel is really interesting. I haven't watched one of her videos in ages.
A person may need to find a spot in a cemetery where there's extra space to expand a plot. Most traditional cemeteries have these sort of pre-sized standard plots, so squeezing a bigger plot between two standard plots isn't possible, and some cemeteries will require a person to buy two plots. So the right cemetery...
That just made me think about, if you go onto a plane, you're going to need to buy two seats. To be so big that you need two funeral plots, hopefully if I get married in the future, that plot will be for me and my wife, and I'll be a normal size, that I won't need to take up both of our plots. Or if I am buried next to my wife, that we wouldn't need to buy three plots, sort of thing. That should be a wake-up call right there for anybody who's watched this video. Like, do I want to take up two funeral plots?
With the available space is necessary to find. And if you're over 400 pounds or like 29 stone, you might want to think about this as you're creating your death plan. You're also probably wondering, how much is this all going to cost? Unfortunately, and I'm not saying this is great, larger caskets, larger cemetery plots, and post-mortem care for very fat bodies are typically going to cost more. It takes more people to pick up, move, or arrange a very fat body. Casket makers charge more for these oversized or custom caskets. A larger grave has to be dug, and if a person is embalmed, often 3 to 4 times as much embalming fluid must be used.
Yeah, and that's another point too, that a lot of these fat people don't think they're going to die young, so they're not prepared for their own death when it comes to that. They still think, oh, I got till I'm 80 or 90. Like, I don't have to think about my funeral plot. And a lot of them haven't been working, so, they don't have life insurance type thing. So this is something that fat people need to consider, that if they continue on living that way and they're not taking care of it, that they can die at a much younger age, leaving their family to have to incur these extra expenses. That's why a lot of them do just go ahead and cremate, because it is the cheapest option. It's still more expensive than cremating a smaller body, but it's just going to be easier altogether to just cremate versus the added expense of an extra large coffin, extra size funeral plot, the amount of work it's going to take to haul a larger body and a larger casket between places, and all that stuff. So it's definitely just a sad thing to consider, because a lot of them don't consider that they're gonna die early, and then they're gonna leave their family with that extra expense. The added costs of a fat burial are hit at a time when the family is already financially hit and emotionally suffering. Yeah, a lot of people who have a morbidly obese person in their family, they spend a lot of money on food. They don't save very often because of that. And so being financially hit like that, it's definitely a terrible, terrible time. I wonder if cemeteries need a deceased of size policy like Southwest Airlines. Yeah, I mean, they probably will. Would you consider editing and uploading this reaction part of your live stream as a separate video? Yeah, I could probably cut this part out and upload it as a separate video. And the fat funeral biz is growing, no pun intended. It's a statement to our modern health and lifestyle issues, self-included. Yeah, that's very true as well. It's definitely very much a growing business, and because people are dying younger, it's just a very, very sad state of affairs. Let's keep watching.
Used, and it takes more time to embalm correctly. So burying a very fat body in a traditional cemetery can cost $800 to $3,000 more than a standard price plan.
Wow.
What about cremation? While not all crematories are equipped to handle the cremation of a very fat individual, it is absolutely possible. Cremating a very fat body requires more heat for a longer amount of time. The cremation does need to be handled carefully, because if the heat rises too quickly, meaning the fat is incinerated too quickly, black smoke could choke the machine. And because of this, many crematories will cremate larger bodies in the morning, starting when the bricks of the machine are cold. But a good crematory person knows how to do that. Another consideration is getting the body into the machine. Standard chamber doors on retorts are usually 33 inches wide, but now larger machines can have doors as wide as 52 inches.
Wow, just to think you need a 52-inch machine just to fit into there. Just the amount of people it would take to haul a fat body into there, much less needing an extra wide space to do the cremation. Yeah, we don't think about this sort of thing. We're not thinking about dying early and burdening our family with this extra expense. And just thinking about that 850-pound woman, it took them 12 hours. It took 10 to 20 people 12 hours just to get her out of the house. I'm sure they had to open up some of the walls and take the door off the hinge and just do all this extra stuff to get her out to begin with. And then she had to stay overnight in a truck because they couldn't find a way to reliably take her to the funeral home and all that stuff. She wasn't even able to have a funeral. I mean, it's just disgusting.
Such machines could, in theory, handle a corpse up to 1,000 pounds. But be prepared that not every crematory has this type of machine. We're really fortunate at my funeral home that we do work with a crematory that has one of these machines. So
yeah, that 850-pound woman had to go to Illinois, and she's from Wisconsin, the Milwaukee area. So they had to travel her out of state to find a funeral home that would accommodate her large size.
It's not an issue with our families. These bigger machines do come with a bigger price tag because more energy and natural gas is used for the cremation process. The vast majority of crematories are going to charge a little more for bodies over 300 pounds. This extra cost could range anywhere from $100 to $500 in the US. Our funeral home usually tries to offset that cost in other ways for the family if they choose cremation. As for alkaline hydrolysis or aquamation, no, it's not readily available or legal everywhere yet, but most standard machines can handle a human up to about 500 pounds.
I haven't heard of this process before. Hopefully she explains what it is. Sally, some people are so big that the average crematory retort can't handle the size, and there's mortuary legend that they are cremated at zoo cemeteries and not hacked into pieces as many believe. Yeah, I mean, that is an option that they'd have to think about. And no joke, the possible grease fire that can occur if a fatter body is burned too fast. Yeah, that's what a lot of funeral homes have to deal with. As gross and disgusting as it is to talk about and think about, that is part of it.
So that's another reason to push for alkaline hydrolysis in your community. At this point, you might be thinking, gee, that all sounds kind of dire. If I'm fat, or if I love someone who's fat, what can I do? Well, one of the most important things
What can I do? Lose weight before you put yourself and your family and the system under that kind of stress. Yeah, the mother of the 850-pound woman was angry that the state of Wisconsin was not prepared for her daughter's death. I think that would be the least of my concerns if I was her mother. I would be more angry and upset that I did that to my daughter and encouraged that behavior and enabled her to be that big, to need that kind of extra support, that she'd have to be transported out of the state, left in a truck overnight, took her 12 hours to get out of the house. Like, I'd be more upset and embarrassed about that than I would be angry that the state wasn't able to accommodate an 850-pound body. But yeah, you can prepare for this by losing weight. Sorry, that's just the answer. Losing weight is the answer. Alkaline hydrolysis is water cremation. It's like turning the body into soup. I had no idea that existed. That sounds kind of gross, but I guess it's a way to go. Water cremation. Wow, I never heard of that.
I can emphasize is being honest about size with your funeral director. This is an issue I've experienced, where either a loved one or a nurse is too embarrassed to tell us that the dead person is over 350 pounds. So when we get to the home to transport the body, we are ill-equipped. We don't have the right size cot, or we don't have enough people to move the body.
Yeah, a lot of families probably just assume that there are services for big people, that they'd be able to handle it fine. Yeah, some of them are embarrassed. Hey, this guy's 300 pounds, 400, 500 pounds. But yeah, I mean, they just think it's normal having a fat person in the house, that they don't consider the extra cost, the extra work, none of it.
When we're not properly prepared, this can be painful for the family, which is the last thing we want to do to a grieving person. I know it's not easy for everyone to have the conversation about size or weight, especially if it's been traumatic or difficult in the past, but being willing to talk about your loved one's size can alleviate so much stress for all involved when planning a funeral. And as I said, consider being upfront about being fat in your death plan while you're still alive. Our population is getting bigger. Ignoring that fact is unrealistic as a social model and a business model. Funeral homes should acknowledge their larger caskets and services. It's not a secret. Both sides, the family and the funeral home, need to be able to have a respectful, honest, transparent discussion about the dead person's size. And
I agree with her here. It's definitely something that should be discussed. And we are going to have to accommodate, as much as we fight against it on this channel, that we don't think that we need to make bigger airline seats and bigger hallways and all that. It's something that's coming, because the general population is getting larger. As much as we don't like it, as much as we fight against it, it is getting bigger. It is getting fatter. And it's going to, the funeral industry is going to have to accommodate that, because a lot of these people are dying younger, as I've already mentioned. It's just definitely a very scary time right now. Just seeing how big people are getting. They're not even thinking about the consequences of it and the extra expense of it either. And so it's definitely something that if you have an overweight person in your life, or even if you're overweight, to start talking about that with your family. If you're not wanting to lose weight, or you're not trying to lose weight and you're buying into the fat activist agenda and all of that, then you're going to need to start setting aside some extra money, right? You're going to have to start talking about this with your family. Like, I don't plan on losing weight. I like being fat, but I'm going to die young, so let's save some money for it, right? Or try to get some life insurance. It's going to be very difficult when you're morbidly obese like that to find a life insurance company that will take you, because usually you have to be in decent health for a lot of companies. I'm sure you might be able to find one out there that will take you being super morbidly obese that way. But again, it's just another one of those considerations that you're going to have to think about. It's new, like human composting. Oh, okay. But then what do they do with the soup? How much of this goopy liquid is left after the process? This is getting gross, guys. Do they release it to the family or dump it in the ocean or spread it over forest land or something? I'm sure all of those are options. Or maybe it's just no different than having ashes. You just kind of keep it locked up in a box. Like we cremated my dad, and so we still have the box sealed up. We've never opened it. So I'm sure it'd be much easier to bury a big bag of goop or something, or to keep it in a box like that. When my aunt died, she knew her size would be a problem, so she planned ahead with the fire department and the coroner office to make sure she wouldn't be sitting inside of her house for days dead. Yeah, that's something you're gonna have to plan, especially if you're getting up there in age and you're just not sure you're gonna lose the weight. Start planning ahead for that sort of thing. Talk to the fire department, talk to the coroner, see what options they have. Be prepared for that sort of thing, and try not to pass that cost on to your family. It is going to cost thousands more. After the body is souped, not the technical term, all that is left is bone. Usually the bones are crushed to dust. Oh, okay, that makes more sense. So I guess the water pressure takes off all of the muscle and fat and tissue, and then it's just left with bones. So that makes more sense. It's arguably more eco-friendly, but many are nauseated at the reality of what happens. But what happens to the liquid? Does it evaporate? This is mind-boggling. Yeah, like we just explained it. We're not left with the soup or the liquid. It's just it leaves the body with the bones left, and then it's crushed or whatever. So it's sort of a similar process. The person water. You guys are killing me. Person water can be disposed at a water treatment facility or similar to ashes. Take it to the earth. I'm surprised I still have 29 people still watching. Forensics takes bodies just the way they are and lets them rot in a field. I think the bodies are studied at different stages of decomposition. Yeah, I've seen videos before where they have bodies laid out along the ground, people who donated their bodies to science or whatever, and so they actually study what happens during decomposition and stuff like that. All right, there's probably not much left here. Let's keep watching.
What that's going to mean for the burial or cremation. This idea was echoed by author and activist Leslie Kinzel, who told us failing to address the different needs of fat bodies has the potential to turn the process into a traumatic one, instead of one that provides peace and closure.
All right, fat activists, listen. The whole process is traumatic from beginning to end. You are adding that trauma to your family. You're adding that trauma to yourself. And so just knowing that your fat body is going to do this to your family and add the amount of trauma, doesn't that drive you to want to change and not be a fat activist, knowing that this adds to the consequences of your obesity? Like, how come this isn't waking you up? You just think, oh, it's no big deal that I'm fat. It's going to cause extra trauma, stress, and financial strain to my family, but I don't care. I enjoy being fat, so I'm going to continue to advocate for fat bodies. Like, are you kidding me? Like, these people drive me nuts.
I think creating death plans should be fun and cathartic in some ways, and it's a real shame if that is taken away because there's fear of not being respected or accommodated. Lastly, and you know I had to go here, green or natural burial could be a really great option for very fat people. No coffin or casket is required, no embalming, no cremation, no burial vault, just a corpse and a hole in the ground, and it's lovely out there. I had to. I hope you learned something today. That's
video. Yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult conversation, and that might seem like the best option if you are left with nothing else. You don't have the money to do that sort of funeral, or to pay for the extra coffin and services. Just dig a hole and throw them in. Yeah. I learned a lot today. Well, good. I'm glad my channel helped you learn a lot today. I want to be either eco-buried with a tree on top or ashes in the ocean where I grew up. I really don't care what happens to my body when I'm dead, because I'll be dead. Whatever my family wants to do, I'll try to be prepared for that, but part of that is losing weight so that it's going to be less dramatic and less strain on my family. Hopefully I'll have the money to save up for that sort of thing, and hopefully I'm not going to be extra large by the time I pass away. That's why I'm working so hard right now. But very true, addiction is a powerful thing. But anyways, guys, thank you for watching. I love you guys, and I will see you next time.